Hello, friends. Welcome to On Giving, incisive commentary and analysis at the intersection of philanthropy and the greater good. I'm Liz Knuppel, President and CEO of Skystone Partners, where we believe philanthropy is a powerful force for good. Today, we'll be talking with my friend Robert Wahlers. Robert is the distinguished co-author of the Philanthropic Planning Canyon, the Fundraisers and Professional Advisors Guide to Charitable Gift Planning, a past AFP Skystone Partners Prize for Research winner, together with his co-author, Brian Sagristano. Currently, the president of Peak Philanthropic, Robert brings a wealth of experience and a profound personal commitment to the world of philanthropy. If I may share a little bit of personal information, Robert was first drawn to influencing fundraisers and professional advisors, empowering them to amplify the impact of charities' missions and programs by his own deeply personal experience. At the age 3.5, he was the first survivor of an extreme case of a rare virus and was saved by compassionate physicians and nurses at a hospital supported by generous donors. And this life-altering event has fueled his dedication to advancing philanthropy. And frankly, we're glad he's here with us today because of it. So with over 25 years of experience as a fundraising professional and gift planning expert, Robert has played a pivotal role in raising more than $250 million for notable organizations such as the American Cancer Society, the Boy Scouts of America, Virtua, and Hackensack Meridian Health. His diverse background includes prior experience in the financial services sector, enabling him to build and nurture mutually beneficial relationships with professional advisors who share a common interest in facilitating philanthropic endeavors for their clients. Wahlers' professional experience spans a range of specialties, including gift planning, major gifts development, moves management, nonprofit management, donor relations, marketing, fiscal management, budgeting, volunteer recruitment, and public speaking. His multifaceted skill set and unwavering commitment make him a formidable force in the world of philanthropy, contributing significantly to the success of charitable initiatives and the realization of individuals' charitable goals. Please join us in welcoming Robert as he shares his knowledge and perspectives about gift planning, donors, and our partnerships with professional advisors to help those donors achieve their personal goals with us today. Hi, Robert.
Hey, Liz. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm so glad to see you here. How's the weather down there in Florida?
Rainy, so I'll leave it at that because it's always warmer than it is where most of the folks are in our audience. So I don't want to ever rub that in, but it is rainy, not the best of days. But as a bit of an update on the bio you shared, now more than 33 years experience and more than $500 million raised. So just a little update for that. Always good to raise more.
Indeed. Twice as much is better than half as much, right?
Yes, exactly.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
yeah,
I'm glad you're here. But before we begin our conversation, I want to update our friends on a little bit of housekeeping stuff.
sure.
And the first one is about format. So Robert and I will be having a conversation. I'll be interviewing about his book, and we'll have some discussion about gift planning and those relationships with professional advisors. Then we'll take a couple of minutes for select questions from you, our audience, and our Q&A session before we wrap up the conversation. If you'd like to ask a question, audience, please use the Q&A feature that's located at the bottom of your screen. The chat feature you used to say hello at the top of the hour has been turned off. As a point of reference, we have a good friend, Skystone Partners colleague, Adrienne Taylor. She is behind the scenes and she will be our question moderator for today's session. And she'll be curating them so that Robert has the opportunity to answer as many questions as he can without duplicates. So Adrienne's back behind the scenes right now, but she'll join us for the Q&A section. All right, so Robert, doing things a little bit differently for this On Giving. I know you've seen a couple of them, so I
Yeah.
hope that you'll bear with me for a short story, but I think it really frames our conversation about philanthropy, gift planning, and donors and their relationships with us.
Mhm.
So Doris Buffett is the oldest sister, as you well know, oldest sister and of the legendary advisor Warren Buffett and founder of the Sunshine Lady Foundation, and she was on a mission. When she inherited Berkshire Hathaway stock from a family trust in 1996, she dedicated the rest of her life to giving it away, mostly to individuals in trouble through no fault of their own. As a philanthropist, she gave away more than $200 million of her own money through gift planning. She said, "We're only here for a small amount of time, and we want to see how much good we can do while we're here. And I always say that there will be. In the future, there would be many millionaires, and they can take care of those problems. But I'm here now, and I'm trying to do what I can." So there's a lot in there, and so much of it relates to what we're going to talk about today. And I wonder, Robert, what is the first thing that we can take away from your perspective to these thoughts related to gift planning, our partnerships with professional advisors? And I mean, surely Doris Buffett wasn't doing this all on her own. Certainly she had professional advisors along the way as well. So what's the first thing that sort of triggers for you in your mind?
Well, it's interesting, Liz. I think of, obviously the more famous Warren Buffett and all the money and what he, was able to do. It really comes down to resources, but then
Mhm.
mostly the thing that resonates for me with Doris is the donative intent.
Mhm.
Without that, no matter what we do as a charity, um, whether you're a professional advisor, a fundraiser, you can't create that feeling inside of somebody that says, I want to give back. I want to
Mhm.
pay it forward. I want to help in another way. I love the book published in 1992. It's still very valid. Prince and File wrote about the seven faces of philanthropy.
Yep, it's on my bookshelf right
There
over
you
there.
go. Yes. And it is such a great resource of how folks think about what has shaped them as a person
Mhm.
and why they are now in a position like Doris to give back to others and to
Mhm.
give $200 million away. Oh my
Yep.
gosh, would love that opportunity. I had the good fortune to work with a woman in New Jersey who had grown up very poor. Her and her sister had struggled growing up. She really was a self-made person. Her and her husband created a HVAC company that did commercial air conditioning, heating in New Jersey, and they amassed quite a fortune. And some years later, she lost her husband to cancer, and she wanted to make a gift to help the cancer center at the local hospital.
Right.
And I would tell you, she thanked me not once, not twice, 8 times for the opportunity to give $2 million. She said, in my lifetime, I never thought I'd be able to give away that money. And I think of Doris and the chance that she had with all that fortune, the Berkshire Hathaway stock, which we all know was amazing how
Yep.
that whole world evolved with Warren Buffett and what they did. And she was able to do good for
Mhm.
others because of that. So, to answer your question, the biggest thing that resonates for me is the fact that she had this intent to want to
Right.
do good. And that should drive us all.
Indeed. And I love hearing that because sometimes whether we're talking about a capital campaign or simply working on putting together a planned giving program for the first time or reinvigorating a gift planning program, we hear about the billionaire down the road who's never talked to us before,
Right.
right? Or Oprah. That's my personal favorite. Well,
Yes,
Oprah will certainly give to us.
sure.
Or Elon Musk. And then the next question is, of course, what's the relationship? And these people absolutely, you point out, donative intent,
Mhm.
but it's intent towards something that's meaningful to
Yes.
them, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So with this, I think it sort of bridges nicely into this whole conversation about finances, financial advisors, and what can CEOs and board members um, really do as it relates to their relationships with professional advisors, and also conversely, because I know that we have not just nonprofit folks here on the call, we also have some professional advisors. What can professional advisors learn and do when they have these folks in their midst
Mhm.
to help them realize their personal vision or intent?
Well, the first thing I think is so important is to listen.
Mm,
God gave us 2 ears and one mouth. We should listen twice as much. And to listen to what people are passionate about can be exciting.
mhm,
Any one of us has something we think a lot of. The hospital that saved my life at 3.5 that you mentioned at the outset, obviously they matter to me. So if
mhm,
somebody comes to me and tries to talk to me about something else, I'm thinking about why I would want to give. And I often go back to that common denominator for me, which is that hospital, the Boy Scouts, since I became an Eagle Scout, the college I attended, those things all are in my mind.
mhm,
So if we think about being a fundraiser, being an advisor, and the person we're talking to, we want to get them to tell us what's exciting to them and to listen and
right.
to really get to hear what the individuals are passionate about. What I have found, we can all ask somebody for a donation. Would you buy a table for the gala? Would you do a foursome at the golf outing for the charity we represent?
Mhm,
And people will do that, but it's not really what they're excited about. If
mhm,
we actually ask them and we get to know what they're passionate about, they can get to a whole other level with their interest and their giving. And when we get there, that's where things get really exciting, especially with gift planning.
right.
Many of the folks we're going to meet have amassed their money over a lifetime. Doris Buffett, for example, over her lifetime. And then at that point where she's able to make the gifts and to do something exciting, she's probably not earning an income, although maybe she is from stock and other
Mhm,
things. But most of the folks we're going to speak to, we're talking to them in their years 60 to 80 years of age, where they've really grown their wealth and now they're in a position to give it. And
mhm,
it is not going to be cash. And
mhm,
interestingly, 92% of assets in the US, household assets, are in non-cash assets. And most
mm,
of what we do as fundraisers is we ask for cash. We ask for the check. We ask for the donation in any number of forms. So if we're only asking for 8%, we're leaving a lot out there.
right.
So in this topic today on giving, around plan giving, around working with advisors, around, doing our best to help folks, if we listen and hear what they're passionate about, and then we talk to them about the non-cash assets, we're going to put ourselves and them in the best position to do the best good.
Right. And so I'm thinking about myself, and certainly I know this much about planned giving, right? Or maybe this much, right? I'm a strong generalist, and I think we probably have a lot of strong generalists in our audience.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking about myself in my early days as a development director.
Mhm.
And I was managing a whole program. And then I hired some goofy consultant. By the way, I bought the firm later, but I hired some goofy consultant.
Love it.
And one of their recommendations for us was to start a planned giving program. And I was instantly paralyzed.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, dear Lord,
Yeah.
I'm 29 years old. I don't have it. Right. I was also very young.
Sure.
And so, can you talk a little bit? Because I know that this was, I had someone mention to me, I can't get enough of planned giving. I need an update on planned giving
Right.
yearly, if not quarterly,
Right.
right? It's specialized, it feels scary.
Mhm.
Why is it that we development officers very often, if we're not specializing it, why do we feel like, oh,
It's interesting. I think it starts with many of us who get into this profession at a younger age, and
hmm,
usually the plan giving expert in the office is somebody older,
hmm,
wiser,
hmm,
credentialed. Maybe they're a former trust and estate attorney, a financial planner, whoever the organization hired. And we start out as this 20 something, maybe 30 something, depending on when you came to the nonprofit world. And
hmm,
we see this person and we put them up there on a pedestal. And we think they have all the knowledge, and many times they do, but it isn't something you can't get to know. It isn't something we can't all learn. I think
Mhm.
it's so important as a fundraiser to be a lifelong learner. Heck, in any profession, you should really try and aspire to continue to learn and gain knowledge.
Mhm.
In writing the book, Brian and I did a lot of research. We learned probably more than we even put in the book and shared with others, but it was
Mhm.
something that really helped us to get to a place of taking our knowledge to that next level. So I would challenge everybody on this call that if you feel the least bit squeamish about plan giving, just start to learn.
Mhm.
I love some of the vendors out there that do some great training. The PG Cow, Crescendo. I've used Crescendo a lot of years of my career. There's some great training based in Indianapolis. The National Committee on Charitable Gift Planners does a great job of offering education. Just learn a little bit at a time. And
Mhm.
if you're someone that's trying to help your organization get started, we can all ask for gifts from a will or a trust.
Mhm.
And I would just say that's the very first stage of any organization. They should at least be asking for gifts from wills and trusts.
Mhm.
And if you just put it out there that your organization would like to receive those, many of the board members, your biggest stakeholders, likely will include you in their estate plan. And
Mhm.
often they just need the language. And the
Yeah.
language can be as simple as your organization name, address, and the tax ID number. And that's all that the attorney would ask to put into their plan. So
Mhm.
if you have that basic information, you can share that with everyone and really start to build a lot of different folks that will
Mhm.
make gifts. We know our best plan giving donors are loyal annual donors.
Mhm.
So for the smaller nonprofit that maybe isn't quite getting those big major gifts, isn't quite getting into the capital campaigns, they should be working toward that. And certainly Skystone Partners would be a great partner on that. But I would tell you that looking at your annual donors, cultivating those relationships, folks that have given consistently over time, even if it's $100, $250, $500 a year, if they've given repeatedly over many, many years, they likely would include you in their will. Or if you take it to a stage two and you're able to offer gift annuities, they
Mm.
would be a wonderful candidate to consider a gift annuity. And that's a whole topic for another on giving
Yes,
session.
it is.
But I
Indeed.
just want to put it out there that the first step would be encouraging wills. And then the next stage up from that could be gift annuities. And then there's
Mhm.
two years beyond that. But I
Sure.
think everybody should feel comfortable at least talking about the idea of somebody or a couple, including your organization in their will or estate plan. And that is usually a very easy conversation because often people that would engage you in a conversation like that are people that have been supportive of your organization over a lot of years already.
Sure. And so I guess, we're talking about sort of different stages of development of the plan giving or the gift planning program.
Mhm.
And one of the most important things, and you and I were talking about this earlier as we were sort of planning for this conversation, is that relationship with the professional advisor. So again, that was another thing that as an earlier career person,
Mhm.
I was like, these people don't want to talk to me. What they're going to think I'm trying to get them to try to get their
Mhm.
clients to try to do something. I think it goes back to that donative intent, but how do you start building that positive relationship, and why is it so important?
Mhm. I think they are one of the three best resources for any fundraiser to consider.
Mhm. Mhm.
Certainly, if you're at a hospital or at a college, you've got grateful patients, alumni that you can talk to. You always look to your board as another resource of referrals and folks that would be interested. But if you're not talking to professional advisors, that's the third group that
Mhm.
you need to really be cultivating and building relationships with. They are the ones that are in the ear of your donors They have clients with high net worth. That's how they're making their money in their practice. And the magic in the mix and the diversity of advisors, you want to get to know bankers, trust officers, financial planners, accountants, trust and estate attorneys for sure,
Mhm.
funeral directors. They are having conversations with folks about planning for funerals. They're talking about end of life. They're in a position where they could suggest, in lieu of flowers, who would you like, donations to go to? Those type of conversations are happening with all that group. But I would tell you, the professional advisors, I think I saw the latest statistic, 89% of donors first heard about the charitable giving concept from their advisor. And that is a major shift from about 30 years ago, where most of our donors heard about these ideas from the charities, from our organizations. And as the pendulum kind of shifted and Merrill Lynch started their Center for Philanthropy, and you had JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley and all these different companies really realizing how there was this opportunity to advise clients on philanthropy. And then we saw donor advised funds pop up. Those things have all now crept into being a typical way that many of our best donors are probably going to consider a planned gift. It's going to be with their advisor at the table. And if we've already built relationships with advisors, there's a great opportunity for us to have success. So I'll ask myself the question, how do you get started with that?
Mm.
Look at your board and the folks that are already engaged with your organization and see what their professions are. If they're in, finance, if they're in banking, if they're an attorney, an accountant, all those people, I would gather them together for a little breakfast, let them know that you're looking to, work more in this area and how you would like to partner with them. They want to grow their practice just like we want to grow the number of donors that give to our organization. So it is a mutual admiration society that allows us both to work together to really grow what's possible with them and their business, and our organization having a chance at additional gifts. So you start from there, and they all know people. I have, at each of the last 3 health systems I've worked at, I have created a professional advisor network.
Mm.
Is just a simple way to gather folks once a quarter. We're not talking about a weekly Rotary meeting or anything really staff driven or staff heavy, which requires a lot of your time, but a quarterly breakfast that allows us to bring folks together. We let 1 or 2 of them do a training offering continuing education credits. So now the advisors are getting some of their education by coming it. We have a mission moment to talk about the organization, and we serve them breakfast. I've tried them at lunch. I've tried them at dinner. Breakfast is always the best. You want to catch them first thing before they get to their office and get distracted with the day's work. So I would suggest breakfast, and I would suggest starting with the group that you already know that's closest to your organization, and then ask them to each bring a friend. So if you start off with 10 and they each bring a friend, you've got 20 at your first breakfast. So
Right.
it's not a hard thing to get the conversation started. And then from there, you can really take their temperature on what it is they would like to discuss and really lean into as far as how they want to grow the conversation. I am sure from all of my experience with it, it'll align nicely with your organization. And
Yeah.
it's amazing, as I held one just a couple years ago for Advent Health in Orlando, and we went around the room. I think we had 43 advisors present for our kickoff breakfast. And we asked, how were they connected to the organization? Every single one of them, whether they were born at the hospital, they had their children at the hospital, their parent had surgery at the hospital, they had help from the hospital, there was connections from all of them with our organization.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you start with that group that's closest to you, you'll find that same thing. And if they each bring somebody, they'll have a connection to your group as well. So
Right.
just a little pro tip, I would consider that breakfast as a first start to try to engage some advisors. Start small. Don't say you're going to have 100 people attend. Start with 10 to 20. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be a lot. And
Yeah.
just get yourself started so you're on that path toward having the conversations. They're people just like us. They want to do well in the community. They often will have some great ideas. And when you align yourself with them, I love Robert Sharp's analogy of compete versus complete. He said, hey, we can all complete one another as advisors and fundraisers working together as opposed to competing.
I love that. Compete. I'm writing that down. Compete
Sure.
versus complete. That's
Yeah.
nice. Yeah. And we're talking here about our relationships with professional advisors, and they have relationships with their clients. We have relationships with our donors, and it kind of might not look like it's all connected, but really in fundraising, we have a lot of triangles, we have a lot of pyramids, all kinds of
Right.
stuff. But
Yeah.
really, it's kind of like this three-way, or maybe it's square, but let's say it's a triangle because
Yeah.
three is nice. How do donors feel? I mean, again, I'm thinking back to when I was earlier in my career, development
Right.
director, and I thought, I'm not going to go talk to wealth advisors. Those donors, they're going to think I'm snaking around their back. Not that I had anybody in particular in mind, but how do donors feel when we have that relationship with professional advisors? What's their feeling about this compete versus complete
Right.
thing?
I can share one great story. I was introduced to a woman who had lost her husband to
Mm,
bladder cancer 10 years ago. And she was just beside herself that the health system that she had worked with at the time hadn't done enough. They didn't take a big enough sample even to do research so that her husband's death wouldn't have been in vain. She was in a position to do something significant. Uh,
mhm.
the local fundraiser I was working with was hopeful that after she had only made a $5,000 gift, that maybe she might make a $50,000 gift. Fast forward the story, in the interest of time, she
Mhm.
ended up doing $2 million to establish an endowment to fund bladder cancer research. And we were able to recruit the top bladder cancer researcher away from Harvard Medical School, Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, to Orlando to do this research. As this was all coming together, she wanted me to get on the phone with her trust advisor and to talk with him. So
Mm,
she arranges the call, and we get on this phone call, and she starts introducing me to David. I'll leave last names out.
sure.
And David's like, Robert. I'm like, David, how have you been? I had called on him within the first month of me being at Advent Health in Orlando,
Mhm.
and had reached out to just get to know him because he was an advisor in the community uh, with SunTrust Bank. And darned if I didn't know who his clients were. But here, 2.5, 3 years later, he pops back up again as the client. The donor
Mhm.
introduces me to him.
Yeah.
And because we had this relationship, he came on and said, you're in good hands with Robert. And I
Mhm.
certainly knew she was in good hands with him. And it
Mhm.
was such a smooth conversation about finalizing all the language for the agreement, the
Right.
gift agreement, and everything else because there was already a relationship there.
That's
And
nice. Yeah.
yes, I share that because if we're not shy and we get out of our office and go see someone, there's a better chance that we're going to be in a position to have a friendly person across the table from us
Mhm.
when we're with the donor.
Mhm.
Most of the donors, and I say most, I think there's only one or two in 33 years of doing this
Mhm.
that weren't happy to have their advisor present.
Mhm.
Every other one of them has always been very excited to have the advisor present. They felt like I could speak to their advisor about these terms and these strategies that they weren't aware of, but they were happy to delegate it to their advisor, to me, to have the conversation to help them.
Right.
So it really is something that in almost every case, they're going to be excited to have you in a conversation. Again, if donative intent is there because they care about your organization, they want to make a gift, they want you to figure out the best way to do it. And that's the kind of the moral of the story.
Right. And so basically the trust between the donor and their advisor grows. The
Yes.
trust between the donor and the development director, MGO, plan giving, whoever
Yeah.
the philanthropic, officer is with the nonprofit organization, that trust and relationship grows, makes the donor feel good because you've been able to realize their vision and help them solve a problem. So Bladder Research Institute, right? Solving
Yep.
a problem.
Right.
And I think what I'm hearing you, and I know that you dedicated a lot of your career to gift planning,
Yes.
but I think what I'm hearing from you is knowing the technical, we got to all know the language.
Mm-hmm.
We have to know the basics of what the instruments are,
Mm-hmm.
because then that makes sure that the professional advisors are comfortable and confident in us, right?
Sure.
But
Yes.
I, as a gift officer, don't have to know all the everythings. Is
Right.
that true?
Yes, thank you for saying that. Again, the young fundraiser starting out who sees the wise old sage in the office. I mean, the last office I worked at, he was 75 and is still doing gift planning. But they never seem to retire. So, in any case, I've shared with so many that you don't have to know everything. There's no way you're going to learn all the ins and outs. Most of these professionals will spend a week every year in Orlando, oddly enough, at the Heckerling Institute, which the University of Miami Law School has run for years. And they go for the week to kind of learn all the new tax law, all the changes that have happened. They spend the whole week trying to get up to speed on that, and they still don't know all the ins and outs. We all keep learning. So I share that because if you have a donor who starts talking about something that might be a little more complicated, just research it. We have our friend Google. Get out there, learn what it is, call on an expert. I'm hoping everybody who's in the audience today feels comfortable to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help going forward. There are so many resources out there for us to learn about that new challenge that you might be presented with. And often there's a wonderful solution to what you're hearing from the donor, from the client, about what they want to accomplish. And if you do your research and get those possible solutions together, I try to offer at least 3, no more than 4 options for someone to consider. That way they can make the decision about what is possible and what is exciting and what could fill what they're hoping to accomplish. So I think a great point you make, Liz, that we don't have to know everything.
Right. Yeah. We don't have to be the legal experts. We don't have to be the financial experts. We don't have to be the tax experts. We are the fundraising experts. And that's why we have these complementary partnerships, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, audience members, audience friends, we have just a couple more questions to ask Robert. And before we wrap up the questions with my interview piece of it with him, I'd like to encourage you, as questions are occurring to you, please use the Q&A feature and go ahead and submit your questions there, because Adrian's there behind the scenes. And so I just want to give you a heads up. We're going to be transitioning to that in about 5 minutes or so. So friends, as those questions are coming up, please go ahead and submit them. So as we're talking about this, Robert, related to contemporary gift plan, we've talked about relationships with our advisors, why they're important, how we can really start doing it in a low impact way that feels absolutely mutually beneficial. Well, low output of effort, high impact, mutually beneficial relationships. But what are the most important aspects to keep in mind with contemporary gift planning? And I'm not asked because there's nothing new in fundraising. Except for when there is. There's nothing new in gift planning except for when there is. So when we're thinking about today's donor, today's gift planning, what's the thing that we ought to have right here front and center?
Well, again, I would get back to the fact that we often ask for cash, and
Hmm.
most household wealth is non-cash. So
Mm,
think about those assets that folks might have that they could donate. There's a number of folks that are high net worth folks here in Florida that have the mountain home in Asheville, North Carolina, or the ski chalet in Colorado, or
yes.
the condo at the beach. So they often use those for 10, 20 years and enjoy it during their children's lives. And then once the children go off, they realize, oh gosh, this is really something that's more of a drain on my energy because I need a management company to manage, renting it out. I have to keep paying taxes on it. The
Right.
HOA asked for a new stipend to put a new roof on all the condos, those kind of things. It
Right.
becomes a burden. So that could be an asset that could quickly
Mhm.
be turned into a donation. I think about folks that have the couple where one of the spouses one of the folks is into collectibles of
Mhm.
some type, the stamps, the coins, the cars. I mean, there's any number of things like that. That
Yeah.
person passes away and the spouse is left to do something with those items. They know it was valuable to their husband or wife, their partner, and darned if now they don't know what to do with it.
Mhm.
What a great thing that
Right.
your organization could help them to figure out a way to liquidate that and turn that into a donation. Um,
Sure.
there's a number of different things like that. I know in Oklahoma, Texas, there's mineral rights as it relates to
Mhm.
oil and things. For a time, we heard a lot about Bitcoin. I try to stay away from that one. But one of the biggest things that most folks talk about now is donor advised funds.
Mhm.
So, if nothing else, we should be aware of how easy it is to encourage the donor to contact their company, whoever they have those funds with, Fidelity, Vanguard, T. Rowe Price, whatever it might be. And all they have to do is, again, give your organization name to that company and the amount they want to give. And it's real easy for them to make that gift. They've already gotten the deduction by moving
Right.
their asset into the donor advised fund. So at this point, those funds are just getting eaten up with sales charges and all those other things we know about from mutual funds and our own 401k, 403bs. It
Sure.
doesn't make a lot of sense for the money to sit there.
Right.
So if we know that's an asset that just about every person we're going to speak to might have because somebody suggested that to them at one point, that is a great place for us to go. It's a great thing to talk about when folks, share the phrase, "Oh gosh, I wish I could make a gift, but my assets are tied up." I love offering back this question. If I could show you a way where you could make a gift utilizing those assets, would you be interested? And often, I don't think I've ever gotten anybody said no.
Mhm.
They'll say yes. And that then gives me an opportunity to look into making a gift from that asset. And that gives me a chance to at least get up to bat with a sports analogy here, to at least have a chance to maybe get a single or a double. Not always the home run,
Right.
but you rarely strike out because you already know they care about your organization.
Mhm.
You already know they have an asset that if they could make a gift from it, they would. And now we just have to figure out how. So
How?
it's one of the ways that you might get into that conversation. And again, we don't have to be the expert on that type of thing. You have a chance to do your homework when that comes up. And there's a number of resources out there I'm happy to share when we get to that part of the conversation.
Excellent. Excellent. And I'm just going to put my own little 2 cents in there. Before you start accepting non-cash gifts, make sure your gift acceptance policies have been updated, have been reviewed, something that any consulting firm can assist you with. Robert, with Philanthropic, absolutely can. So just want to lob that out there. Make sure your gift acceptance policies are up to date.
Yes.
So
Along with Liz, you make a great point. Along with that, a real estate questionnaire.
Ah.
Don't know about that, you'll want to look into that.
Mhm.
Too many folks over the years have wanted to donate land, which maybe had an old gas station on it. You could
Mhm.
end up paying more in environmental cleanup to remove those tanks
Yeah.
than you would get in the way of land. So
Right.
doing a real estate questionnaire along with your gift acceptance policy, those two are a great life preserver to help to save you if somebody wants to make a donation and everybody, the CEO, the board is like, oh my gosh, this person's wanting to make this great donation. Well, it may
Maybe
not
not.
be as good as it is. You want to do
Yeah.
your due diligence, and those things are helpful.
Excellent. Super. We have a number of questions here that have come in over the past several minutes. And Adrian, if you'd like to hop on and be front and center here to help make sure that we are working our way through, where are we going to start today, Adrian, with our questions?
So I think maybe I'll start with some kind of tactical questions and then move into other questions because I'm kind of seeing a theme here.
Okay.
And I just want to start out by saying thank you so much for saying you don't have to know everything. I am guilty of being that. I was that person, Liz, who said to you,
Me
I
too.
need my plan giving
Oh,
like seminar, webinar every single year.
mm,
But thank you for saying we don't have to know everything. I can
Right.
come. But one of the questions that we are getting is about language.
Mm.
There is someone who's on the call who's grown their major gift program and they feel really good about it, but taking that next step into talking about planned gifts. So, can you talk about some signature words or maybe even some taboo or forbidden words that we either need to use, not use, listen for in these conversations?
Sure. Well, certainly one of the things that you want to remind yourself is to use language that donors are comfortable with.
mm,
For example, some research was done, and folks are more comfortable with the word will than bequest. And too often in nonprofits, we use the term bequest. Sounds very legal. It sounds very rigid. It sounds a little off-putting, and people don't know it. But everybody's pretty comfortable talking about a will. And I would encourage you to try to use will in every case, which is a more comforting word. Folks pretty much all know what a will is. So that's the first thing. I would also encourage you to talk about things that matter to the donor. If we are donor centered and we talk about those things that are helpful to them, that often leads to gifts for us. For
Mhm,
example, I mentioned gift annuities earlier. Gift annuities are a great way for donors to make a gift to a charity and then get income for the rest of their life. We shouldn't sell those like
mhm,
you would an annuity or life insurance or something. The idea that really is exciting for those is how we can help a couple to increase their income in retirement. Maybe we want to help them to pay for their grandchild's education. Maybe we want to help to fund a project at their church. In
mhm.
all of those, you're hearing me talk about things that matter to the donor. Now,
Yes.
the donation to the organization that starts the gift annuity obviously will help the organization, but that's not the thing that donors are going to care about. They're going to care about increasing income in retirement and those other things that I mentioned. So that's
Mhm,
another thing that if we just tweak how we speak to people, we're going to put ourselves in a lot better place to help them because we're reaching them on their terms and we're not, being organization centered. There is, and Liz knows this from the book she mentioned that I wrote with Brian, that we did a bunch of research on generational cohorts. And it's amazing that all the generations prior to the baby boomers would be very happy to talk about the organization and are happy to be supportive of the organization. But from the baby boomers down through all the more recent generations, they don't care about the organization. They care more about their needs and their wishes. So it is interesting that now only about 6% of the population are those folks older than baby boomers. So we've got to talk
Absolutely.
to the 94% of the people we're going to speak to about things that matter to them. If we don't, they're just going to glass over and tune us out, and they'll think, gosh, you don't care about what I'm interested in. It's the same stuff, but
Mhm.
we're talking to them on their terms. So I love the question. I love that people are thinking about that, because if you're thinking about the language and what you're saying to your donors, you're putting yourself in a whole different level to be the best fundraiser, or, as we may have professional advisors on the call, the best professional advisor to your client, because you're caring about what they think about. And that is so important.
Let me add on to this, because here's another layer. I know I have been told that our monthly donors are some of our best plan giving prospects.
Mm-hmm.
However, I have noticed that with major gift donors, we get more conversations. We can uncover that whether or not they have a will or have an advisor. But sometimes with our major gift donors, or not major gift, our monthly donors,
Sure.
have been doing it for 5 or 10 years, we may not get that opportunity, or it just may not come to our mind that we need to have that conversation. So, are there any tips or tricks to uncover through our monthly donors if they
Yes.
truly are?
Yes. I did a seminar for a couple of years on plannual giving, and everybody got a kick out of that term. But basically, it's putting plan giving messages into your annual giving appeals. Now, we've moved away from a lot of the direct mail, and we're doing a lot more with e-blasts and a lot more, digitally. But we still should be putting language and information and helping our monthly donors, our annual donors, to learn about plan giving over the long haul. If you do that at the point when they're about to retire or in retirement and they're in a place where they're now thinking about plan giving, you'll have a chance to have those conversations. Too often we forget about that, and then people get to a point in their lives and maybe another organization cultivated their interest, and now they're giving to that organization and not to ours. And it was, quite frankly, because we didn't let them know that we were interested in playing gifts, and that there's a couple of different ways folks can do it. And over time, as you send out that annual appeal, that monthly appeal, if you have a
Mhm.
story about a couple that included your organization in the will, or you have some other information that might be helpful, those are the ways that over the long period you educate them. It's not going to be a sprint, it's going to be a marathon. You've got to educate them over a long period of time. But I can tell you, the annual donor, if their gift is, say, X, a major donor is often going to give 10 times what their annual gift is, but the plan giving donor will give 100 times what their gift is. So the effort you spend on those monthly or annual donors could
Mhm.
yield bigger gifts. And when you talk about the quantity of annual and monthly donors you have in your organization, if you get even 10% of all those donors to make a plan gift, you've just really done well for your organization.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Sure,
Um, I have a question about working with advisors.
sure.
So, when you're bringing them together, do you invite one from each firm, or do you invite a group in from a firm? And is there a, a difference in how you work with advisors that are like an investment firm, and then those kind of wealth advisors that you might find at like a community foundation?
Well, great question. I can tell you, bringing any and all to the table is the smartest thing. And again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a magic in the mix. The accountants want to meet the attorneys want to meet the financial planners. Everybody wants to meet everybody. So bring as many in, keep that diversity flowing. I mentioned funeral directors. That's not one we often hear about. Real
Mhm.
estate brokers. I mean, they're in a position to help you with transactions. They also are there at a big, monetary decision for their client. So there's a lot of different folks that could be brought to the table, but I would bring many people together. And the idea is that you're really trying to grow it exponentially. Start with whoever you already know in your organization and try to get them to bring friends. And if it's multiples from one firm, as long as they've got a way to sort that out internally, they typically want to keep track of who has the relationship and how that's going to be cultivated and all that stuff that we all do too. They do the same thing. And they'll figure that out on their end. It may be they all find it interesting and they all find it valuable. So you might have 3 or 4 attorneys or 3 or 4 life insurance agents coming from the same firm. Not a bad thing that would be the case, but invite all of them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The more the merrier. Strategically, the more the merrier.
Yes.
Do we have room for one more?
I think so. And Robert,
Sure.
yeah.
Okay. So we have a gentleman asking, can you give an example where you stimulated donor intent in a donor who was previously neutral at best towards giving transformative gifts?
It's interesting that it is really hard to get folks to part with their money if they don't have some sort of interest in them. I've met with a lot of individuals that have significant means and they just weren't raised to give. I remember the first time I ever had to collect for an organization. It was a little orange box collecting pennies at Halloween for UNICEF. Some of us might have had that experience years ago. It's funny how we all learn about it. Maybe it's at church with passing the plate. If we haven't learned that, though, where do you ever pick that up from? So the one example I would think of is where I had a couple who was very friendly with a board member, and they came with them, sat at their table at every gala, were active in being supportive, occasionally would maybe buy an auction item with a silent auction, but never made any gift. And I played the long game and was patient. And being that I was at a health system, eventually they had a health issue. And they called upon their friend and said, hey, could you have somebody, help us here? And I actually stopped by their room, paid them a visit, made sure they got what they needed, with their experience. And then, about a month later, the board member said, they were so appreciative of that. And I said, well, could we have lunch and really talk about what we're doing? And they set that lunch up and we were able to then have the conversation. And I briefed the board member ahead of time to say, hey, I'm going to talk about this piece. I need to talk about your why. Why are you involved? Why are you on the board? Why do you give? Why does this matter to you? And darned if by the end of that lunch, they were talking about a 6-figure gift. They had never considered that. They did a $250,000 check initially. And then after that, they got into a longer term pledge where they were able to make multiple gifts. But it was because of using that ally, that board member who was the connector. I think if it had just been me calling on this couple, they wouldn't have necessarily given me the time of day. But because their dear friends had continued to cultivate them, mainly as a friendship and the experience of going to a nice gala or whatever it might have been, they enjoyed hanging out as couples. But then when it came down to it and they saw the value of the healthcare and that experience, that really led to something that was better. So I think you really have to customize it for whatever this gentleman has with this particular donor prospect. You got to figure out what's going to matter to them. And again, try to get them to tell you what matters the most.
It's like that old adage. Well, I don't know if it's an old adage. I felt like when I came into the field, it was an old adage of the right person at the right time for the right thing for the right amount. So, yeah.
And I also love the old chestnut. If you ask for money, you usually get advice. If you ask for advice, you often get money. And every time, Liz and the team does a feasibility study for a capital campaign, the best part of the feasibility study is asking the advice of these prospective donors. Are we headed in the right direction? Do we have the right idea about what we should be raising money for with this upcoming campaign? You ask them for that advice, and then the next question is often, well, if we hit the nail on the head, would you consider a gift? And then that's possible because you've asked for their advice.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, there's one more comment that we didn't get to through the questions, and I just want to call it out. My friend John Tafaro, who's used to be with Chatfield College, mentioned IRA rollovers, and he said, might this be an easier gift planning method than a testamentary gift or a will? And it's easy to talk about. If people have more in their IRA, they've got to take the distribution, and they might as well roll it over to you if they don't need it. So absolutely, John, thanks so much.
Right. Well, great point. That hadn't come up in the conversation, but IRA rollovers are a huge one to talk about.
Absolutely. And I think we've hit on nearly all of the questions. Nune, you had so much good stuff, good questions, good notes here. Anything that we didn't hit on today, we'll make sure that in our follow-up email with the recording of our conversation that we include those, as well as some contact information for Robert as well. So now I think we're going to have to wrap up. And while I'm wrapping us up, I know that I really benefited from Robert and Brian's book that came out a number of years ago. And we've got a slide that Sarah is going to pop up with a QR code if you'd like to go. And it's available, I think, through Amazon, but you can find their book there if you'd like to scan the QR code. And so to wrap things up, ladies and gentlemen, what an enlightening conversation we've had here today with Robert. I so appreciate it. Again, he is the president of Peak Philanthropic, a gift planning consultancy, and the co-author of the Philanthropic Planning Companion, which of course you all can scan that QR code and find out where to get it. We have explored his remarkable journey and deep commitment to philanthropy, driven by a passion to influence fundraisers and professional advisors in amplifying the impact of charities, missions, and programs through relationships with donors. And as we conclude our conversation, I'd like to just circle back around to our friend Doris Buffett. She said, someone is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. Robert and his advice to fundraisers and professional advisors exemplifies this statement, planting seeds of philanthropy that have grown into impactful initiatives benefiting countless individuals and communities. So Robert's skills and unwavering commitment to philanthropy have made him a tremendous gift here today. And I'm grateful to have had him. So please join me in expressing our gratitude for Robert for sharing his knowledge, his perspectives on gift planning, donors, and the crucial partnership with professional advisors, fundraisers, and the donors. And may his insights continue to inspire us in our own philanthropic journey. And Robert, particularly to you, thank you for being a beacon and inspiration in our philanthropic landscape. To our audience, thank you for joining the meaningful conversation. Wishing you continued success in your philanthropic endeavors. And remember, the seeds we plant today will shade generations to come. I hope you all will join us for our next On Giving on Tuesday, February 13th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time with Masa Uo, who is the CEO of Japan Fundraising Association and the Vice President of the Graduate University at Shinken, where he founded the Center on Impact Economy. Masa will be joining us from Tokyo, Japan, live for a riveting discussion on international perspectives on fundraising, impact philanthropy and the impact economy, and starting a philanthropic movement that has spread like wildfire across Asia. Until next time, go forth, do good work, and remember, philanthropy is a powerful force for good. Thank you.